Groups from across the country have joined forces and created the Civil Society Working Group, which submitted recommendations on state capture to the Zondo Commission. The recommendations are based on how to reform the state and the private sector in the wake of state capture. According to the group, established in November 2018, state capture and corruption go hand in hand with equality and poverty. Joining us now from our studio in Sea Point in Cape Town is Zen Mathe from the Open Secret non-profit organization that focuses on investigative research. Zen, good morning. Welcome to Morning Live.
Morning, man. Thank you for having me.
Talk to us about the Civil Society Working Group's premise. What is the core of your submission?
Well, the Civil Society Working Group on State Capture is a coalition of over 25 civil society organizations that came together in 2018 to really support the work of the Zondo Commission, but more than that, to ensure that the findings of the Zondo Commission include the voice of the people of this country, who are the true bearers of the impact of state capture and corruption. And the premise of the group is ultimately the fact that the South Africa's struggle and fight for human rights and social justice will not be realized if those who loot with impunity in the public and private sector remain unaccountable.
I mean, the submission actually goes on to provide the Zondo Commission with detailed suggestions on how to deal with systematic failures due to the state capture. Perhaps you can talk to us about that.
Yes. The joint submission by the Civil Society Working Group on State Capture is endorsed by, again, like I said, over 25 civil society organizations. And we've termed it an agenda for action. And it is based on 15 evidence-based submissions that have already been made to the Zondo Commission by civil society organizations in the working group. And along with that, it's based on prolonged civil society engagement within the group and with the public. We hosted a people's hearing on state capture last year in 2019, where we called and invited the public to come and bear witness and give testimony to the impact of state capture and corruption on their lives and their communities. And this too is included in the joint submission. So the working group has really gone the mile to ensure that as much as evidence-based submissions have been made, and it's also based on that, it is also goes back to really highlight the true cost of the impact of state capture and corruption, and that is ordinary people of South Africa. And that is what we focus on. Things that we are focusing on are reform of SOEs, impact of the limiting of the impact of corrosive impact of political party funding, the enablers of state capture in the private sector, as well as ensuring that the criminal justice agencies of South Africa are capacitated. These are some of the recommendations that we make.
Yeah. I know that SOEs, state-owned enterprises, also came up in the discussion, basically saying that, as many of us are beginning to understand and have thought for some time, they've actually been used as the vehicle for state capture. This is also a big one. Would you like to address that one?
Well, yes. I can't obviously speak to it individually because it's a whole cohort that we present. But yes, SOEs we do focus on because this is taxpayers' money, and this was used as the vehicle through which state capture too happened, and the impact of it is felt on the pockets of South Africa today. But on top of that, Leanne, linked to the SOEs, we also bring in the private sector to say these too have been the enablers of state capture, and an analysis of state capture and corruption in South Africa will be remiss not to include the private sector as well in its analysis of what happened.
Yeah, it really would be. And I mean, another big thing, and people have been speaking to this for quite some time, and this is also a recommendation from your side, is to have a look and talk to some of the civil society working, well, I beg your pardon, you as the civil society working groups, going on to say that professionals like lawyers, accountants, bankers who helped siphon off those funds must also be held to account on this one.
Yes, no. Part of the recommendations is for the Zondo Commission to use its full extent and full powers to call those executives of these private companies to give witness and to give testimony at the Zondo Commission, and that's part of our recommendations. And on top of that, we call for the Zondo Commission to release an interim report in the meantime with the findings that have been made by the Commission. And we call on the NPA to continue and to prioritize prosecutions from information that is coming from the Zondo Commission.
Yeah, I mean that would be ideal, is an interim report. We know that there have been extensions, and we know that we've now got to wait basically another year to hear anything. But what do you think an interim report would do at this point? Do you think that could help South Africans and people that are really sort of looking on and keep on commenting that there has been no ramifications, we're still sitting and waiting, there's been nothing after all these years and after this amount of money has been spent? Do you think an interim report could be one of the solutions?
Well, definitely, Leanne. We call for an interim report as the Civil Society Working Group. You know, we have been termed the country of commissions, and people and the public of South Africa view commissions in this country with suspicion. And an interim report will really help the Zondo Commission to gain the public's trust in the work that it does, especially now that it is seeking to extend the life of the Commission. An interim report would be pivotal in gaining public trust and really sharing the information that is coming forward and allowing relevant state institutions to take this information forward and take actionable steps.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is I doubt that is going to happen. I don't imagine that an interim report will be released, but you know, a good thought nonetheless. But what I want to ask you, and I think an important aspect to look at, is we talk about the impact of state capture. What has it been? What is it on the ordinary citizen?
Leanne, thank you for asking that question. The impact of state capture and corruption, as we have seen, is the increasing inequality in our country, the loss of jobs, the deepening of poverty. And in the hosting of the People's Hearing on state capture, we rarely saw witnesses coming forward and showing that, for example, the Limpopo textbook saga, children in schools in our country are without books because of state capture and corruption, and that is crippling the education system in our country. And we bore witness to youth coming forward and really telling the story of what it means to sit in class having to share textbooks between 10 people and the kind of impact that has. And that is what, as the working group, we have really worked to include in an agenda for action. We're saying, look at our country and look at where we are and see the brunt of state capture and corruption.
Do you think we're outraged enough as a nation? I mean, just from what you're saying, something as simple as school textbooks are not being delivered, all because of what's happening with state capture. I mean, yes, we may look at lights, yes, we may look at all the other issues that we have confronted with, but, you know, when you start touching on the youth, their education and the impact, you know, this is something that, as a nation, do you think we're too accepting of what's gone wrong?
Leanne, an engagement with the public by the Civil Society Working Group has definitely illustrated that. We have an informed public in South Africa that knows what is going on, and because of that, we are even more outraged as a public. And honestly, through this agenda for action, we highlight all the factors. For example, failing healthcare systems that have seen families unable to receive essential and dire healthcare, and that leading to the death of family members. This is the stuff, Leanne, that state capture and corruption have caused in our country. And as a public, because we are so well informed, we are furious. Yes.
Yeah, we certainly are. Just as I wrap this up, Zen, who are some of the civil society and the organizations that have actually you've worked together with?
We have worked with My Vote Counts, Black Sash. Yeah. We have worked with Outer Right to Know, and we've really tried to bridge the civil society gap between organizations and come together with organizations like Corruption Watch, Section 27, and a whole host of other civil society organizations to really bring the story of the impact of state capture forward and to make robust evidence-based submissions. And equal education has helped us to do that too. And like I said, there's 25 civil society organizations, and these can be found in an agenda for action, the joint submission. That's available online.
Zen, thank you. What is that address that we can visit to go and see it? Online.
It's at www.opensecrets.org.za.
Excellent. Zen, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Zen Mathe from the Open Secret non-profit organization that formed part of the civil society working group that handed in submissions to the Zondo Commission. Go out there on their website and you can take a look at everything. All right.